Alright, so today I'll be reviewing my latest motorcycle, which is the KTM Duke 200 BS6 model. This is the latest KTM Duke model released. To those who follow my channel, you would know that I used to own the previous KTM Duke model, and I also did the review on that as well. So I'm very excited to compare these two. Basically in this video we will compare the differences both in features and aesthetics. And I also will be taking it out for a ride and share my observations, including the pros and cons of owning this bike, and also share some comparisons with the previous KTM Duke model. In terms of aesthetics, it does look new and refreshed, and it resembles the Duke 300 more than it used to. Alright, so let's start with what is different between the two. In terms of features, there are two main differences. The latest Duke 200 now comes with dual channel ABS as well as LED headlights and taillights, which are the two main things I mentioned in my review of the previous Duke 200 model that they could improve. Well, KTM did this and made a great bike even better. Other differences I instantly noticed were firstly the handlebar. The handlebar is noticeably closer to you now, and it has its benefits such as leveraging when you're turning. This can be an advantage when navigating back and forth between traffic, but I guess it will depend on personal preference and if you like having the handlebars closer to you or not. Another difference I noticed was the larger seat. The seat now appears larger and a bit longer than it used to be, so this is something that I like. I'm a bigger guy, so having a larger seat makes it more comfortable to me and gives me some more space to move around. The pillion seat as well is larger, so it probably will be a bit better for your back rider on this new model of Duke. Alright, so next on the things I noticed that's different is the seat height. Well, technically on paper, the seat height is the same at 810 millimeters. However, since the seat is wider on this model, the seat height feels taller. So this is something to consider before purchasing this motorcycle if you're on the shorter side. Make sure that the seat height is manageable. I'm at 5'10" and I'm still on my toes on this bike. Having said that though, I have quite short legs for someone that's 5'10". So there's another difference that I can't say I've noticed, but I can see is different on paper. The latest Duke 200 is 9 kilos heavier compared to the previous model. This is not considered to be a good thing. Having said that, I don't really notice much difference, but I'm a bigger guy, so that might be the reason. Overall, the bike still feels light and easy to manage, but as I mentioned before, make sure that you're tall enough to handle this motorcycle. Something I noticed is that the engine and transmission feels a bit different. So despite it coming with the same engine as the previous model, they definitely have made some tweaks to it, considering that it does feel different. Shifting is even smoother than before, and I consider that part to actually be one of the strengths of the previous model, so they just further improved that part. And overall the engine just feels more refined. So good job KTM. So despite having the same engine, there is a difference, even though it's not major. And my final observation on the difference between the new and the old model is the engine heat. So I've been riding this around for a bit now, and when I did the same thing with the previous model, you could quite feel the engine heat even though it wasn't too bad. However, on this model, it feels completely cool, and I can't feel any engine heat whatsoever so far. Now, I haven't been riding this for hours in heavy traffic at this point, so that's something to consider. But still, the engine heat is less, and that's a great thing. Alright, so those are the main things that I noticed that's different compared to the previous model. But now let's look at this motorcycle by itself, and what the pros and cons are of owning this motorcycle, in my opinion. So let's start with the pros. Well, firstly, it still retains that good power and torque. It's a joy to ride, and there really is not much difference in power, and that's always been a strength for the Duke. The transmission as well feels very smooth, as I mentioned earlier, and this is an improvement. They've done some tweaks, and it feels better. At a 169,000 pesos, I think you get a really good feature-packed motorcycle at a good value. By adding ABS and LED head and taillights, I think they've done themselves a great favor, making this an excellent option within its segment. Alright, so let's talk about the cons. Well, firstly, I would like to mention would be the seat height. Well, for me, it wouldn't be really a disadvantage, as I can manage this seat height perfectly fine. However, for a lot of riders in the Philippines, you would struggle with the seat height of the KTM Duke 200, especially now that the seat is wider compared to the previous model, so that's something to consider. However, if you're on the taller side, then obviously this would not necessarily be a con. But I think for the majority, this could be a problem, so I'm listing it under cons. And the other potential disadvantage is the maintenance cost. It seems to be a bit on the higher end compared to its Japanese counterparts and competitors, so obviously this is something that is important for a lot of riders, having a motorcycle that's cheap to maintain. KTM would not be on among the cheapest brands to maintain, but I wouldn't say it's in particularly expensive either. So this would be up to you to consider if this is very important to you or not. Alright, so next let's look at the areas for improvement, in my opinion. The first thing I would want to mention would be the dash or console. Practically it works really well, and in terms of the functionality there's no issues. However, since the rest of the design of the motorcycle is refreshed, this dash or console feels quite outdated, and I wish they would consider upgrading that part. But who knows, maybe by upgrading that part, the SRP of the bike will be even higher, so maybe that's something to consider. But if you look, for example, at the dash console of the Duke 390, you know, there's a huge difference. So maybe they could do something similar in their next release. So let's see. Next thing I would like to mention on improvement areas are the tires. Now, they still come with MRF tires, which are perfectly fine, but not great. Having said that, it's perfectly common for smaller displacement motorcycles to have tires that are on the cheaper side. This is not specific for the KTM Duke, but for a lot of smaller displacement motorcycles. I don't consider this to be a major issue, as tires is something you easily can upgrade on your own. If you have the extra budget, I would recommend upgrading to the same tires as the Duke 390. You can go with either Metzeler or Pirelli, but obviously there are other good brands out there. So, what do you guys think? Is the Duke 200 a motorcycle you would consider buying? Or, for current owners of the Duke 200, what are your comments? Do you agree with my observations, or do you have other observations? I would love to hear feedback from other Duke 200 owners. I hope this video was helpful, and to those who have not done this already, please take the time to like this video and subscribe to my channel.